Hi, this is Scott Hamilton from InKnowVision. Thanks for watching this webcast. This is one of a series of short videos on captive insurance companies. You can view more of these videos by going to YouTube and simply search for InKnowVision and captives. You can find more information on our website, which is innovision.com, shown on the screen. These videos are meant to be educational and are not designed to be tax advice. Please be sure to read the disclaimer on the last page of this short video for more information. If you have any questions or would like to explore next steps, feel free to give us a call, send an email. Both the number and the email address are listed here on the slide. Feel free to reach out to us. The phone number and the email address will be listed on the last slide in the presentation as well. Today we're going to be looking at captive insurance jurisdictions. Another way of saying that is, of all the places in the world that I can form my captive, where should I do it? So every captive insurance analysis is going to involve a look at jurisdiction or place where the captive is going to be formed. And broadly speaking, there's really two choices. You can choose to have your captive formed inside the United States, or you can choose to have it formed outside of the United States. If you're going to do it inside of the United States, there are 28, I believe 28 states as of this recording in 2013, 28 states that have some captive legislation. Certainly, like everything else, some states are what I would call better states than others because they've got more modern captive legislation. They've got more up-to-date thinking involved in their laws. Probably one of the leaders in the United States in terms of current thinking for most business owners would be Delaware. But certainly these other states that are listed are good options. Vermont probably has more captives than any other state, certainly in the United States, and possibly more captives than any place in the world. They've got a very good little industry going there managing captives. They've got a good set of laws, but they also have a fairly strict set of compliance requirements, which I don't think adds a whole lot from the captive insurance company's point of view or from your business's point of view. So typically we would stay away from Vermont as a jurisdiction and look to one of the others. We're going to talk a little bit about why you might form your captive in the United States or why you might form it outside of the United States. But first of all, let's take a look at some of the jurisdictions outside of the United States. Listed in reverse order in terms of most captives, Bermuda is actually the country with the most number of captives outside of the United States. And it may have more than Vermont. I'm not sure what the current statistic is on that, but certainly it's again, a very popular jurisdiction. Both Vermont and Bermuda tend to be the jurisdictions where you would see the Fortune 100 companies having their captives, or Fortune 200, or wherever they hit in the list. They tend to use Bermuda and Vermont primarily. The smaller captives tend to use other jurisdictions, and two jurisdictions that are very popular at the moment are Nevis and Anguilla. And basically they are popular because of their laws and their requirements and kind of their ease of doing business. So Nevis you would probably see as our first choice for outside the U.S. And Anguilla certainly as a possibility, but really at the moment there's no reason to move from Nevis. Now, as the laws change over time, there may be reason to move to a different jurisdiction, which is not really that problematic. But for the moment, I would say that if I had to pick one jurisdiction in the U.S. and one out where it's probably easiest to do business, it would be Delaware and Nevis. Now, as we go through the analysis, if this is something that you're interested in, part of the analysis is going to be, where should this captive go? And part of the analysis is going to be a cost-benefit analysis, so you can make an intelligent decision about, whether or not the benefits that you're getting outweigh the costs of doing a captive insurance company. So one of the things that it's important to recognize, at least at the moment, this may change in the future, is that generally it's less expensive to do business outside of the United States, or more expensive to do it inside the United States. Typically there are more compliance rules inside the United States. There are more requirements to use third-party professionals. The fees tend to be higher. Capitalization requirements tend to be higher. So it just and just in terms of order of magnitude, you would generally think that the cost of doing business inside the United States instead of out is probably 30% or more higher inside the U.S. So anytime you're thinking about a strategy or a structure like this where you're doing cost-benefit analysis, obviously on the cost side of that, the lower you can keep your costs, the better. And so generally speaking, I would say if it were just a cost factor, we would almost always want to form outside the United States. A couple other issues that you typically think about is, well, if we form outside the United States, what does that mean in terms of tax? And I would tell you that in almost every case, there's no difference in the taxation of a captive outside the U.S. as opposed to inside. In fact, almost every captive that I'm aware of that's been formed outside the U.S. by a private business owner is going to be electing to treat their captive as if it's a U.S. company for all tax purposes. So you pay the same tax rates, you have to follow all the same rules, file all the same forms that you would if you are a captive insurance company inside the United States. So that seems to be a non-issue once people understand that. A big issue is, where are my investments going to be? So the captive insurance company might get a premium of $300,000 or $500,000 or $1 million or more in some circumstances. Obviously, a substantial amount of money. And a lot of business owners will ask, if I have a captive that's formed in Nevis, do I have to keep my money in Nevis? And the answer is no, you don't. I mean, you certainly could, although I'm not sure why you would, but you could. But that's not usual. Normally what will happen is the captive will establish a banking relationship with a bank in the United States, or a custodial investment relation with a custodian here in the United States. There are some additional forms that usually need to be filed in order to do that, but it's a relatively easy thing to do. We have worked out a separate single-member LLC investment structure that tends to make the life easier for opening accounts. So basically, you can keep your money here in the United States, whether your captive is formed inside or outside the country. Essentially non-issues. In terms of control, your control is exactly the same. In terms of types of insurance, all the same. Captive manager requirements, all the same. Capitalization, which is another way of saying, gee, how much money do I have to start this company with? What do I have to put in? I mean, most of us, when we started our companies years ago, probably started out with very, very low capitalization. But when you're starting an insurance company and you're going to be regulated by an insurance division somewhere, either inside or outside the U.S., they're going to require that you have some seed money, some seed capital in the company. And that can be a lot or a little. Anguilla, I think their requirement is about 10 or 1,000 or 35,000. I can't remember off the top of my head. Nevis is not much more. Compared to capital requirements in the U.S., where they're going to be at 100,000 and maybe as much as 200 or 250,000. So definitely a more intense capital requirement. Having said that, it's been my experience that even if you're forming in Nevis or Anguilla, the actuary who does all of the math analysis on the captive is going to tell us that we've got to have higher capitalization than $10,000 or $35,000. It's in all likelihood going to be about $100,000 in capitalization if you're forming a captive outside the U.S. If you form inside, it could go as high as $250,000. So capitalization is probably not as big an issue as it would appear at first. And then the only other thing that I've personally run into is a client who is concerned about owning an entity outside the U.S. And this is just personal. They're thinking that at some point in the future they may want to run for a significant office. They're certainly intelligent enough to do that. They're successful enough to do that. They've got the backing to do that. But whether they do it or not, I don't know. But the concern in the back of their head is, when people start to investigate me and start to print things in the newspaper, I really don't want to have myself connected, like some other politicians recently have, with an offshore jurisdiction. Even if it might be completely and totally legal, it just doesn't look good in the political scene. So for that reason, this particular client formed a captive in the United States, even though it probably would have been cheaper and more effective to do it outside. So if that's an issue for you, it's certainly part of our analysis. It's something that we would think about. But generally speaking, the chips fall on the side of creating a captive outside the U.S. And just once you understand what the elements are and why you would do one or the other, that will lead you to the right decision. So hopefully you've got a better idea of where captives are formed and why you might form in one place or another. Certainly if you have any questions, feel free to call us or email us if you'd like to have a conversation about whether or not the captive insurance idea is appropriate for you. We'd love to do it. Just give us a call. If you feel like you need some more information, remember we have a lot of information on our website, and you can watch more videos like this one, which I hope are short and to the point and give good information, by going to YouTube and just simply searching InKnowVision and captive. Thanks very much for your time today. I appreciate it. We look forward to a chance to possibly have a conversation with you in the future. Thanks again.